Are we live? We're live. Let's go. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. It's great to be back with you. I hope you're doing well. You can listen to me on Rumble and YouTube. And of course, you can follow me on the platform X. Please like, share, and subscribe because it does feed the AI algorithm. And lastly, please post your comments and or questions below in the comment section. It'd be great to hear from you. Well, hello there again. Today we're just going to jump into the article here. Today we're going to be talking about men, women, and evolution. And found this article on Scientific American. Of course, Scientific American is not the bastion of. I would argue it's not the bastion of knowledge that it used to be. It's not the credible source that it used to be. I used to read it a lot, but in recent years, I myself have stopped reading it. But this is par for the course now on Scientific American. The article title reads: "The theory that men evolved to hunt and women evolved to gather is wrong." Well, of course, that's quite a claim. And so let's see if they have any evidence and data to back up that claim. Subtitle is "The influential idea that in the past men were hunters and women were not isn't supported by the available evidence." Now, of course, the evidence is always changing in science. Evidence in science is, especially in the social sciences, it is influenced by culture. So I would expect that the evidence of today would not be the same evidence as 10 years ago, or 20 years ago, or 30 years ago, or 40 years ago. There is a different process in the social sciences than there is in what's typically referred to as the hard sciences. So that'd be like physics, chemistry, mathematics. And so anyway, that's what I would expect. And of course, I've already read through the article, and so that's what we're going to get. I guess I'm stealing my own thunder on this one. And so let's get on with the article. Oh, the article is by Sarah Lacey and Kara Okobach. Interesting little art there. Signify women. The article starts: "Even if you're not an anthropologist," which I'm guessing most of us are not anthropologists, "you've probably encountered the one of this field's most influential notions known as man the hunter." No, I actually haven't. I haven't encountered that, but I suspect that man the hunter is the focus of in popular culture, is that man was of the hunter gatherers, men were the hunters and women were the gatherers. I suspect that's what that book is about. I'm guessing it's a book, which it is. The theory proposes that hunting was a major driver of human evolution and that men carried this activity out to the exclusion of women. I haven't read the books. I don't know if that's completely true. For classroom purposes, I will assume it is. The author is being honest here. It holds that human ancestors had a division of labor rooted in biological differences between males and females, in which males evolved to hunt and provide, and females tended to children and domestic duties. Yeah, that seems like that would be the case based off of cultures across the world, because it's not just if you look at cultures across time and space and ethnographies, and I've read quite a few ethnographies, you would find that in general this type of division of labor is occurring. Right now, I guess they're probably going to get to a point and they do. I probably shouldn't say they're probably going to, because I've read it. They're going to get to a point where they're going to talk about how, well, past ethnographies were written through the lens of a man, right? And so therefore that man couldn't understand the experiences of a woman. That might be true. The reverse is true as well. The reverse is true as well. So, okay. Yeah. But it doesn't mean that the observations they're making in the ethnography is wrong. That doesn't mean they're wrong, right? A person could be a complete sexist, but that doesn't mean, but their science could also be, could be really good, right? The observations they make could be, well, so if the observations they make, are those observations reproducible? Right? Let's be scientific about this. If the observations they make, are the observations reproducible? What does that mean? Somebody else gets on, takes their data, and reproduces it. Matter of fact, in engineering, you have to do that, and you do it a lot. It's called testing and validation. Well, it's a part of testing and validation, but it's something you have to do. And so, with any type of ethnography, now, oh no, okay, let me add in the, well, the patriarchy idea here. And so with the patriarchy, this person would probably reply to me and say, okay, but all men were sexist and they lived in the patriarchy. Okay, but it doesn't mean their observations are wrong. It doesn't mean their observations are wrong. A terrible person can be right. That's assuming that that's a terrible system. It's assuming that. Yeah, there's always a lot of assumptions. And anyway, I had a thought there, but I'm not going to continue with that thought. So let's continue on here. Okay, so it says males evolved to hunt and provide, and females tended to children and domestic duties. The article continues here. It assumes that males are physically superior to females. Males are physically superior to females, and that pregnancy and child rearing reduce or eliminate females' ability to hunt. So the males are physically superior to females part is, I don't know. I haven't. So in the ethnographies I've read, the person will generally indicate men in general are better at doing this. Is that the same thing as saying, well, males are physically superior to females? Are those two statements equivalent? It doesn't seem that way to me, right? Because you could say in general, and if you say in general, that means, well, there's some sort of probability, there's some sort of distribution, right? Like a Bell distribution. A lot of people call it a Bell distribution, but it could be a normal distribution, right? So then you'd have one distribution, which is male physical ability, and then you have another one, which is female physical ability. And so in general, what would happen is, if you say in general, you would have to overlap those two distributions, which means sometimes women are more physically capable than men, but in general, men are more physically capable than women. That's what I've read when I've read anthropological papers, ethnographic papers, essays. I don't think I've ever actually heard somebody say, at least in the last 50 years, that men are superior to women in some way. It's usually in general. And of course, men don't give birth, unless we want to bring up the question of what is a woman. But do we really want to go down that road? Because I think we all know what a woman is. Even if we can't put it into scientific language, we can at least describe what a woman is and what a woman isn't. Right? There is a separation of the sexes. Okay, so anyway, we'll continue here. Okay, so males are physically superior to females, and that pregnancy and child rearing reduce or eliminate a female's ability to hunt. I would agree with that. You do not want women to go out and hunt while they're pregnant because hunting is a dangerous activity. Only stupid people would do that. Only a population of people who don't want to survive would do that. It's the same reason why you don't send women out to war. You send men out to war because men are expendable. Women are not expendable. Now, I'm not saying that men don't have value. I'm a man, of course. I think men have value, but it would be dumb for a society to start sending women to war, right? And war and although hunting and war aren't necessarily the same activities, in some ways they are, but in some ways they aren't. They're still high risk activities, right? So why would you, if women can give birth and that's your future, right? You want to propagate it's not just you want to propagate the the species, you want to propagate your group. Then why would you send out the people who are capable of doing that? That doesn't make any sense. And I suspect the groups that did that in the past are no longer with us. And those are not our relatives. It's the groups that didn't do that, that protected women. Those are our ancestors, all of us. So this all logic doesn't. So they're saying it assumes, but they're going to go on and say, well, that's just not true. And it could be the case that in some instances women did go out and did uh, they did hunt with men, but most of the time that wasn't the case. Smaller groups, and if you read any anthropology, ethnography, you'll find that the bands or groups were already really small. They were usually weren't larger than 50 people. They usually weren't larger than 50 people, right? So you're talking about a family of people. So they couldn't afford to send women out. You send your women out, they all get wiped out by something, I don't know, another group of humans that are also hunting, right? They come into conflict, or they wipe out half your females. I mean, does that make any sense? People who lived 10, 20,000 years ago weren't feminists. They didn't have the luxury of protection. They didn't have the luxury. Yeah, luxury. What is this, Rob Henderson? Yeah, Rob Henderson came up with the idea of luxury beliefs, which I think he's mostly correct. I have some concerns about the reproducibility of his work, but I have the concerns of reproducibility of most psychology, even though I find a lot of the ideas interesting. But anyway, okay. Well, let's just continue. Let's see if I expand on those thoughts anymore. So, Manhunter has dominated the study of human evolution for nearly half a century and pervaded popular culture. Okay. I'll accept that. It is represented in museum dioramas and textbook figures, Saturday morning cartoons, and feature films. The thing is, it's wrong. Okay. That's a claim. It's wrong. When you make a claim, you have to back it up with some evidence and data. Mounting evidence from exercise science. I wouldn't go with exercise science. I really wouldn't. If you're gonna make an argument, don't start with exercise science. Okay. Indicates that, so let's say mounting evidence from exercise science indicates that women are physiologically better suited than men to endurance efforts such as running marathons. All right. Do we have to go any further in this article? Do we have to go any further? Because I feel like if we go further, okay, let me say this. So I went ahead and I did a quick Google search, right? Of course, we're gonna note that Google is a confirmation bias machine. But all I did was I put marathon times of men versus women. That's all I put. That's all I want to know. What are the marathon times of men versus women? Again, we're going to keep the idea of distributions, right? A female distribution versus a male distribution and how they overlap. All right, so we're going to leave. We're going to go over here to the first source. And this is from the marathonhandbook.com. So, what are the current average marathon times? According to Run Repeats investigation, the overall average marathon time worldwide is 4:29:53. I thought it would have been 6 hours, but that's pretty fast. Okay. So breaking it up by sex, the average time to run a marathon for men is 4 hours and 21 minutes and 3 seconds. The average time to run a marathon for women is 4 hours, 48 minutes, and 45 seconds. All right, so like I said, so the average is the mean. If you look at the bell curve, the mean is right in the center of the graph. Right. So so it says here, what's the claim? What's the claim? The claim is mounting evidence from exercise science indicates that women are physiologically better suited than men to endurance efforts such as running marathons. When I hear better suited, I think of more capable. In other words, you're going to have better times. Women should have better times. That's how I read this. Women should have better times than men. If physiologically better suited than men to endurance efforts such as running marathons. Okay, so we just saw there one piece of data. The data could be wrong, but we have one piece of data. But and by the way, our suspicions are right. I suspect myself and for you for you the person, the listener, you're probably saying, well, no, my instinct tells me that men are better in general, better marathon runners or faster marathon runners than women. Right. By the way, this better word, that's a word that every scientist and engineer needs to get rid of. Don't use that word. That's an awful word to use. Use the word like optimal. Optimal, and I know no pun intended, is a better word. Right? Optimal, because optimal can mean maximal or minimal. Right? So, women are physiologically better suited than men to endurance efforts such as running marathons. Okay. So it says here, this advantage bears on questions about hunting because a prominent hypothesis contends that early humans are thought to have pursued prey on foot over long distances until animals were exhausted. All right, so this is actually a testable hypothesis. You could create an experiment and run this experiment. You could do that. This happens all the time in test engineering or engineering when you test things. You create an experiment. You say, okay, well, will this work? Right? What's the hypothesis? What have our observations been? All right, should always start from observations. Never ask a question. I heard this in academia. It's like, well, you need to ask a question first. Well, don't I need observations? No, you just ask a question, you'll find observations. No, then you're just confirming your biases if you do that. Matter of fact, if you go to the philosophy department, they'll tell you, no. You make observations first, and then you come up with a hypothesis. Then you can, then you run the experiment, collect your data, and see how well your data compared to your hypothesis. Or maybe your observations were wrong. Sometimes that happens. Okay, so here, hypothesis contends that early humans are thought to have pursued prey on foot over long distances until the animals were exhausted. Yeah. So okay. So who would on average, who in general would chase those animals? Would you want somebody who can perpetuate your group into the future? Would you want that? Was that a good idea? Right. I sometimes I think there's some sort of superiority complex going on here as well with this type of thinking. See, these people weren't idiots. Now, could they do mathematics? Probably not, but they weren't idiots. I can imagine a scenario like, I mean, this would never happen, but I can imagine a person goes back in time and says, well, why aren't your females hunting with your males? And the entire group looks at them like, are you nuts? Why would we do that for? You see, we only have like 10 females. Because life was not easy back then, right? I mean, I know this is hot off the press news. I mean, everyone listening to this knows that it wasn't easy. It was much more difficult. Today is the most comfortable, prosperous, stable time we've ever lived in human history. We are all incredibly privileged, all of us, each and every one of us, for living today. Not 5, 10, 15, 20,000 years ago. That's insane. So I imagine these people made decisions that they made decisions based off of what was best for the group. And what's best for the group, not sending the people out who can birth you children to perpetuate your group. That wasn't it. And so then, by the way, so we can test this. We can test the hypothesis, right? Right. So the hypothesis is, okay, so this advantage bears the questions about hunting because a prominent hypothesis contends that early humans are thought to have pursued prey on foot. Right, men. It's mostly men. Right. So we can test this. And even if we don't want to go through the process of testing, we can come here and we can say, okay, well, what's the average marathon runs? Well, men. So ideally, you would probably want to have more men do it. Okay, so let's go to another source. It says here from runninglevel.com. What is a good marathon run time? A good marathon run time is 3 hours and 48 minutes and 20 seconds. This is the average marathon time across all ages and genders. The fastest marathon time is 2 minutes and 1 second. Okay. So then what is it by males and females? A good marathon time for a man is 3 hours and 34 minutes and 56 seconds. This is the average marathon time across men for all ages. And by the way, it's going to be faster for younger men, right? If we look at data for younger men, it's going to be faster than it's going to be for older men. Not always. Again, in general, which doesn't mean always. Of course, the fastest marathon run time is time ran by a man is 2 hours and 1 minute 39 seconds, and it's a man. The man has the fastest run time. So let's go down here. Oh, what is this for? Is this for marathon run times? So age 10, novice, intermediate, advanced. All right, so age 10 is going to be 3. So it's going to be slower. Hasn't. So let's just look at it intermediate, right? So age 10, age 15, these are people that are still growing, right? Age 15, you start to get into puberty, you become a teenager, right? Then you're 20. So it looks like those are the fastest times. 3 hours, 34, 3 hours, 34 minutes, 3 hours. And so at 35, 3 hours, 36 minutes, right? So it decreases, right? As you get older, your marathon time decreases. That makes sense. And I bet you if we looked at this data table, that'd be true all across, right? From beginner, novice, intermediate, advanced to elite, right? We'd start to see that pattern of, okay, at younger ages, which you wouldn't want to send those people out to hunt, your time is going to be slower anyway. You're going to slow down the group. But for the older teenagers and the younger men, you're going to send those guys out because they're faster on average. Plus, they have more upper body strength. We really want to get in that conversation, right? Because what happens if you start wrestling, right? You need upper body strength to throw things. Upper body strength, especially it's like in special forces, in anything related to that, in any groups of or any military units associated with special forces, you not only want your men to have fast run times or faster and average run times, but you also want them to have upper body strength as well. They're not bodybuilders, but these are men that can push around a lot of weight. You want that. That becomes extremely important in combat. Right. And again, combat and hunting aren't the same thing, but they do have a lot of similarities. All right, so let's go down here. Female marathon running times. A good marathon time for a woman is 4 hours and 8 minutes. This is the average marathon run marathon time across women of all ages. The fastest marathon time ran by a woman is 2 hours and 14 minutes and 4 seconds. That's impressive. Again, 13 minutes slower than a man. Sit there and start your watch and look at the watch. Look at your clock for 13 minutes. That's how much slower the fastest woman is compared to the fastest man. All right. So the last thing here, a triathlon. So I wanted to look at triathlon data as well, right? Because we're talking about endurance. Because a lot of this argument depends on endurance. We don't really need to get into the biology and the chemistry of things. We could just look at the data itself. So the data is the output, right? And if we follow back, we should expect, if we follow back from the data, we should expect certain things about men and women are different, right? We should expect those things. All right. So, and by the way, since we're not running our own experiments, we can look at other people's experiments, right? And so you could go in. So think of a marathon as an experiment, right? I mean, you could sit there, and they could shoot the gun, and they all start running. And you say, okay, well, I expect the male to finish at this time. I expect the female to finish at this time. I expect the average male time to be this. I expect the average woman time to be this. Right. So that's how you would run the experiments. But we don't need to in this case because everyone else is already running the experiments for us. So Ironman, swimming, running, and biking. Right. So the swimming part gives you upper body strength. So this doesn't break it down into the three sports, at least going through it, but it gives you the average. So the average finishing times for the Ironman. Men 12 minutes 34 seconds. Women, well, actually, I think that's 12 hours 34 minutes, 13 hours 28, something like that. I guess I'd have to look. That doesn't seem right to me. But anyway, but the point is, men's times on average are faster than women. So top 20%, men average is higher than the women's average. World's champs qualifying. Men 40 to 44, women 40 to 44. Right, men's is higher than women's. So if we go and we look at that by age, we should also see a similar pattern than we did to the marathon. Right. So in general, and these are endurance sport. This is an endurance sport. Triathletes are endurance athletes, right? Again, run, swim, and bike. Those are endurance exercises. And so going through all, so we're seeing a similar pattern here as we are with a marathon. So I'm not going to read the rest of the article. I'll put the link of the article down in the down below the video if you wanna. I'll go back to it. If you want to read the rest of it, it's going to go the way you think it is. Eventually they're going to get into, and let me just, there's this one part here I did highlight. If it's still highlighted, let's see here. Yeah, right here. So they say, unfortunately, both these words set. Okay, so this is, I'll start a sentence before. So for ethnographic and archaeological evidence, we are attempting to reconstruct social roles for which the terms woman and man are usually used. Unfortunately, both these word sets assume a binary. It's because it is, which does not exist biologically. Okay, so now we see where they're going with this. Psychologically or socially, sex and gender both exist as a spectrum, but when citing the work of others, it is difficult to add that nuance. You can make an argument for nuance within gender, but I would assert that gender is approximate to sex. It doesn't mean there haven't been cultures that don't have gender, don't have multiple genders, but approximately gender is going to be approximate to sex, right? And sex is binary. At least discrete. Let me say that it's at least discrete, because there are going to be instances, and this is rare, where somebody's going to have both genital sets or both sets of genitals, but that's rare, right? 99.9% of the time, you're going to have a woman or a man. That's what you're going to have. But anyways, that's all I got. I'll put these links below so you can check them out yourself. If you have any comments or questions, please do post those below. If you think I'm completely wrong on this, go ahead and post your comment below. I'd love to hear it. I'd like to hear why you think I'm wrong. It's always great to hear stuff like that. Other than that, have a wonderful day, and I will see you in the next episode.